The alien cadets of the Zyrex Academy were known for their pride. Every species on the station considered themselves stronger, smarter, and far more advanced than humans. To them, humans were just soft creatures from a small blue planet, too emotional, too fragile, too unpredictable. That's why when Cadet Mason Blake walked through the docking bay with a small orange cat in his arms, the entire hall burst into laughter. The sound echoed through the metallic corridors. Alien instructors twitched their tails in disbelief, while reptilian soldiers hissed sarcastically, "Is that a pet?" One of the blue-scaled Tereth sneered. "Humans bring weapons to war, not toys." Mason didn't answer. He simply smiled and adjusted the soft creature in his arms. The cat blinked lazily, completely unimpressed by the stares of a dozen alien warriors. Its tail flicked once, calm and confident. Rumor spread across the academy within hours. The human had brought an animal, something called a cat. The aliens joked about it endlessly. Some said it was for emotional comfort. Others believed humans needed smaller creatures to protect them from fear, but Mason didn't care. He had named the cat Whisker, and that tiny creature followed him everywhere, to training drills, to the mess hall, even into simulation pods. And somehow, Whisker never seemed ordinary. During a high-gravity combat test, Mason's ship simulation glitched. The lights flickered, the system stalled, and a holographic monster, an 8-limbed venom fang beast, emerged from the malfunction. Cadets screamed. It wasn't supposed to be part of the training. The monster's fangs dripped green plasma. Even though it wasn't real, the fear it generated was. The other cadets scrambled to shut down the simulation, but the system locked. The creature turned toward Mason's group. Its deep growl rattled the walls, and then Whisker stood up. The little orange cat hissed once, a small, sharp sound, and the temperature seemed to drop. Its eyes gleamed like two molten suns. Before anyone could react, the simulation sensors spiked. A surge of unknown energy rippled from the floor, bending light and sound. The holographic monster froze mid-step. Then it screamed. Every system in the chamber overloaded. Sparks flew. The Fang Beast's data shattered into white static and dissolved into nothing. The monitors crashed, lights burst, and the entire simulation bay shut down. When the power returned, Mason was standing in the middle of the room, still holding his cat. The alien instructor stared at him in stunned silence. Whisker licked its paw like nothing had happened. One of the engineers ran diagnostics. "This is impossible," he muttered. The simulation core melted. The AI's neural path was destroyed. Something fried it from inside. Mason just shrugged. "Maybe it had a bad dream," he said quietly. That night, whispers spread through every dorm. The human's pet had killed a simulation beast, something no weapon had done before. But Mason didn't explain, not even when the academy commanders called him for questioning. He only said the system overloaded. Still, strange things kept happening. Whisker sometimes sat near the observation window and stared into deep space. Its fur glowed faintly under the starlight, patterns forming like constellations. The aliens pretended not to notice, but some swore they heard soft growls in their sleep, like a predator hunting something unseen. Then came the incident on Deck 9. A cargo bay containment failed, and an actual biological fang beast escaped, a real one, not a hologram. It had been brought in for research, chained and sedated. But now it was awake, and it was hungry. Security alarms blared. Cadets ran for the lifts. The monster tore through steel panels as if they were paper. Its venom hissed against metal. The academy guards tried stun rifles, plasma nets. Nothing worked. The beast climbed toward the crew quarters, toward Mason's room. He was asleep when it broke through the door. The sound of claws scraping metal filled the air. The fang beast reared up, fangs dripping poison, ready to strike. But just as its head lunged forward, Whisker moved. The cat didn't growl or run. It stood at the edge of the bed, fur rising, tail flicking like a whip. The air shimmered again. The same energy that destroyed the simulator returned. Quiet, invisible, unstoppable. When the guards finally arrived, the fang beast was gone. Only a thin layer of black ash covered the floor. Mason was still asleep, one arm over Whisker, breathing calmly. The cat opened one eye, glowing faintly, and then drifted back to sleep. From that night, nobody laughed again. The Academy sealed the reports. The alien scientists began silent investigations into human pets. And everywhere Mason went, aliens stepped aside. Some called him dangerous. Others whispered about the dream killer. But Mason never spoke of it. He only smiled when Whisker purred. Deep down, he knew that little creature was more than a cat. It was a protector, and something far older than anyone understood. And in the darkness between the stars, something ancient purred back. After the Deck 9 incident, the Academy changed. Not officially, of course. They still held drills, issued lectures, and pretended nothing strange had happened. But beneath the surface, everyone was afraid. The Fang Beast's death was labeled as containment collapse due to energy malfunction. That's what the official report said. But the soldiers who cleaned the bay knew better. They'd found no signs of plasma fire or weapons discharge. The steel was half melted, half vaporized, like it had been erased. And at the center of the room, resting peacefully on a warm patch of metal, was a single paw print. Mason went about his duties as if nothing was different. He trained, studied, and ate with the same quiet focus. Whisker followed him everywhere, curling up on his shoulder or sleeping in the hood of his uniform. The aliens avoided them both now. Even the bravest species, the Zilthian soldiers with their bone armor, moved aside when they passed, but not everyone kept their distance. Commander Vectra, the Academy's lead xenobiologist, had a fascination with Earth species. She was tall, silver-skinned, with reflective eyes that saw every small movement. Her voice was calm, soft, but carried the weight of command. She requested Mason to meet her in the research deck. The room was bright, filled with humming scanners and soft blue light. Holograms of various Terran creatures floated in the air. Wolves, dolphins, birds. "I've been studying your companion," Vectra said. "Your cat." Mason crossed his arms. "He's just a pet, Commander." Her gaze didn't shift. "That creature vaporized a Fang Beast. Nothing just does that." Whisker, sitting on the desk, blinked lazily. His tail curled, tip flicking. The commander stared back at him, but only for a second. Then she looked away. "Our sensors detected an unknown energy field during the incident," she continued. "It matched no known technology, no recorded biological emission. Not even psionics." Mason didn't answer. He could feel Whisker's heartbeat through the table, a calm, steady rhythm that somehow felt wrong, too powerful, too old. "Tell me," Vectra said quietly, "do humans have a term for creatures that dream themselves into power?" Mason tilted his head. "No, but we have legends. About animals that protect people. Sometimes they appear in dreams. Sometimes they don't leave." Vectra nodded slowly. "Your legends may be more accurate than you think." That night, the Academy's upper decks were quiet. But beneath them, behind locked lab doors, scientists worked in silence. They replayed recordings from the Fang Beast attack, frame by frame. The moment Whisker opened his eyes, the entire energy grid registered a spike, like a miniature star igniting inside the ship. And in that one instant, every AI system across the base flickered. Even remote systems on nearby satellites glitched. Whatever Whisker was, it wasn't limited to biology. A week later, another event confirmed their fears. The station's AI core began to dream. No one had programmed it to. But at 0300 hours, the AI started generating visual patterns across the monitors, images of endless fields, stars, and glowing feline eyes. The tech teams tried to reboot it, but the systems refused to shut down. Instead, it purred through the speakers, a deep, resonant hum that shook the walls. The AI whispered one phrase before going dark. "The Dream Hunter has awakened." By morning, the Academy was in lockdown. Vectra was gone. Her lab sealed itself from the inside, and Mason's door had been welded shut by order of command. But Mason wasn't inside. He was already moving through the maintenance tunnels, Whisker on his shoulder, guided by a faint hum in the walls. The air felt alive, vibrating softly. Whisker's fur glowed faintly, like lines of golden code rippling under his skin. Mason whispered, "You're not just a cat, are you?" The creature blinked slowly, as if amused by the question. They reached the observation deck, overlooking the gas giant below. Through the glass, Mason saw flashes of light in the clouds, storms forming strange patterns, circular and pulsing like an echo. Behind him, alarms began to wail again. The Academy's defensive grid was activating. Dozens of alien soldiers rushed past, weapons drawn. One of them yelled, "Containment breach in the lower levels! Something's coming through!" Whisker's ears flicked toward the sound. He hissed softly, not in fear, but in warning. The lights dimmed, then flickered, and then darkness. A shape moved in the shadows beyond the corridor. It was not alien, not machine. It looked like the Fang Beast, but larger, its form unstable, flickering between physical and spectral. Its claws scraped metal, leaving trails of light. The creature roared, a deep, distorted sound that carried across the deck. The soldiers fired. Plasma bolts cut through the air, but the monster didn't stop. It phase-shifted, absorbing energy like a living void. Mason stepped forward. "Whisker," he whispered. The cat leapt down from his shoulder, landing silently on the floor. Its eyes glowed white-hot, brighter than any weapon light. The air shimmered, sound bent, and the temperature plunged. The alien soldiers froze, their breath visible in the cold air. Then, with a single flash, everything went silent. When the light cleared, the monster was gone, and Whisker was sitting on the floor licking his paw. Mason knelt beside him, exhaling shakily. Around them, the aliens stared in disbelief. None spoke. Finally, one muttered, "It doesn't just dream of killing monsters. It brings those dreams with it." Mason looked down at his small companion, who now purred softly against the metallic floor. He wasn't sure if he was looking at a protector or a god that had decided to nap beside him. The Academy never recovered from that night. Half the systems were fried, and the upper decks still carried the faint burn marks from whatever energy Whisker released. Security teams patrolled every corridor, scanning for unstable dream resonance, whatever that meant. Engineers whispered about echoes moving through the data core, shadows that purred when you weren't listening. Officially, they called it the Dream Incident. Unofficially, the aliens started calling it the night the cat woke up. Mason and Whisker were confined to a research wing under high surveillance. Not a prison, they said, but the guards outside carried plasma rifles and never blinked. The room was lined with silver shielding, energy suppressors, and constant monitoring. Even the air vents had sensors. Mason didn't mind. He knew what they were really afraid of. Not him. The cat. Whisker sat quietly beside him on the table, staring at the observation glass. He didn't eat. He didn't sleep. He just watched. Sometimes the lights flickered when he blinked. Sometimes the hum of the ship fell silent for a moment, as if holding its breath. Then Commander Vectra returned. She looked different. Her uniform was gone, replaced by a gray research coat, her eyes sharper than before. The way she spoke was careful, almost reverent. "Mason," she said softly, "I've been studying the energy readings. That thing you call a cat, it's not just an animal. It's a dream construct." Mason frowned. "English, please," she smiled faintly. "A creature that exists in two realities at once, physical and subconscious. It doesn't dream, it creates dreams. It walks through them like we walk through corridors." "That's impossible," Mason said. "So is killing a fang beast by sleeping," she replied. She touched a panel, bringing up holographic readings. Patterns of neural activity pulsed like a heartbeat. "This is Whisker's energy signature. It doesn't match any known life form. In fact," she paused, "it's not even biological. Its structure looks like living energy wrapped in organic disguise." Mason stared at his cat. Whisker blinked slowly, completely unbothered. "Then what is it?" he asked. Vectra's eyes glowed faintly. "An echo from before your universe began. A being that drifted through dream space, waiting for something or someone to remember it. And it chose you." Before Mason could respond, alarms blared through the station again. But this time, it wasn't an internal threat. It was coming from outside. The viewing glass behind them shimmered as a massive shadow passed across the stars. It was enormous, Organic and mechanical at once, a ship made of shifting matter and flickering light. It looked alive. The intercom crackled. Unidentified vessel approaching. It's emitting non-physical energy signatures, frequency overlap with the dream incident. Mason felt the air tighten around him. Whisker stood up on the table, tail high, fur glowing faintly gold. Vectra looked terrified. "It's them," she whispered. "The ones it came from." The alien ship drifted closer, silent, graceful, terrifying. It didn't fire weapons. It didn't send hails. It simply hovered there as if waiting. Then lights began forming across its hull, patterns that pulsed like words. Mason couldn't read them, but Whisker could. His eyes mirrored the same golden symbols. The cat leapt from the table and padded toward the glass. He touched it with one paw. The air vibrated. The entire ship groaned. Every mind on the station heard a single voice, not through sound, but inside their thoughts. A voice ancient, patient, and immense. "The dreamling is awake." "Return what was borrowed," Whisker hissed. The glass cracked. Mason shouted, "He's not going anywhere!" The ship outside began to shift, unfolding like a massive flower of light and dark matter. Vectra staggered backward, eyes wide. "Mason, if that thing takes him, your reality could unravel." He didn't listen. He grabbed Whisker and held him close. The cat's body was warm, pulsing with energy. The air around them blurred, folding like a dream about to end. "Mason!" Vectra yelled. "You can't fight it!" "Watch me!" The shadow ship fired, not a beam, but a ripple through reality. The walls twisted, colors inverted, and gravity shattered. Every alien on the station screamed as the world bent around them, and then Whisker opened his eyes fully. Light exploded outward, white, gold, infinite. Every sound stopped. The alien ship froze in place. Its hull fractured like glass under pressure. Then, piece by piece, it began to dissolve. Inside the silence, Mason heard Whisker's voice, not in words, but in emotion. Calm, defiant, protective. When the light faded, the alien vessel was gone. Only stardust remained, drifting where it had been. Vectra stared in disbelief. "It destroyed them!" "Through its dream." Mason knelt beside Whisker, who now looked smaller, tired. "You okay, buddy?" The cat blinked once, meowed softly, then curled up against Mason's chest. The golden glow faded, but outside the viewport, deep in the void, something else stirred. Something watching. Something older. Vectra whispered, "You just declared war on beings that live between dreams." Mason looked out into the stars, his voice steady. "Then they'll learn what happens when they threaten a human's friend." The galaxy didn't believe it at first. A classified human cadet, a small Terran cat, and a destroyed ship made of living darkness. It all sounded like one of those drunken spacer tales. But then the dreams started. Entire crews began waking up screaming. Planets reported waves of shared nightmares, vast shadow ships drifting over oceans, whispers saying, "The dreamling has escaped." The Galactic Council held an emergency session. 10,000 representatives across hundreds of species gathered in a floating citadel orbiting the twin suns of Cora. The meeting lasted 16 hours. No decision came. The word human kept repeating like a warning. Meanwhile, at the Zyrex Academy, Mason and Whisker were no longer guests. They were potential threats. Security drones followed them. The alien cadets no longer mocked. They prayed quietly when they saw the small orange creature walk by. Some believed it was divine. Others thought it was a weapon from the humans, something designed to infiltrate thought itself. Mason didn't care about politics. He only cared about keeping Whisker safe. But even that was becoming impossible. Commander Vectra entered his quarters one night, her expression grim. "Mason, I've been decoding the energy Whisker released during the battle. It's leaking into hyperspace communication networks. The dreams are spreading through subspace, turning into real entities wherever they gather enough emotion." Mason rubbed his face. "You mean nightmares are alive now?" Vectra nodded slowly. They were always alive. They just needed someone or something to wake them up. Whisker looked up from Mason's lap, eyes half closed, tail swishing lazily. "He doesn't look too worried," Mason muttered. "That's what worries me," she replied. Outside, the stars pulsed faintly, each flicker a signal through dream space. Across the galaxy, strange events unfolded. Ships vanishing mid-flight, their logs filled with fragments of lullabies. Planetary AIs refusing to shut down because they were too scared of the dark. On one moon, miners claimed to see golden eyes blinking in the tunnels before power failures. The phenomenon had a name now, the Dream War. And every log, every report traced back to one name, Whisker. The council issued an order: retrieve or eliminate the dream entity. Half the fleets agreed. The other half refused, terrified of provoking it further. But a task force was formed, composed of 6 elite alien species, armed with psionic dampeners and quantum nullifiers. Their destination, Zyrex Academy. Mason found out before they arrived. Vectra showed him the encrypted orders. They're calling it containment. But they're bringing annihilation weapons, dream killers. If they destroy Whisker's mind, it could collapse half the galaxy's neural web. Mason clenched his fists. So either they kill him, or they kill everything trying to stop him. "That's the risk," she said. "And you have to choose fast." He looked down at Whisker. The cat was watching him with that same calm, endless gaze. "You understand me, don't you?" Mason whispered. The lights flickered. The temperature dropped. The air shimmered with faint golden motes. Whisker meowed once. Suddenly, Mason was no longer standing in the lab. He was on an endless plain of silver sand under a black sky. The stars above moved like living creatures. Whisker sat ahead of him, enormous now, towering, majestic, his fur glowing like a sunrise. Mason's voice trembled. "Where are we?" "Between dreams," the voice answered, not from Whisker's mouth, but everywhere. "Where thought and fear are born." Mason took a step closer. You can talk. I always could. You just never slept deeply enough to hear me." Mason stared up at the vast being. "What are you?" "Once I was a guardian. I watched over dreamers across countless worlds. Then your species began to dream differently, wilder, sharper, filled with love and fury. Your kind changed the flow of the dream space. The sand beneath them rippled with each word. Mason saw shapes, humans, alien faces, all sleeping, connected by golden threads. They mocked your small creatures, Whisker said. They laughed at your weakness. But dreams don't obey strength. They obey belief, and humans believe fiercely. The vast cat's eyes narrowed. Now something old has awoken to consume that belief. "The ship we destroyed, it was only the first." Mason's heartbeat thundered. "So they'll keep coming. Until I end them. Or they end everything that dreams." The vision cracked. Mason gasped and found himself back in the lab, drenched in sweat. The alarms were blaring again. Outside, through the viewport, hyperspace itself was tearing open. Massive shapes crawling out of light and shadow. The Council's fleet arrived, weapons glowing. But so did something else, enormous dream beasts with wings made of darkness and eyes of fire. The dream war had come. Vectra gripped Mason's shoulder. "If he fights them here, he'll destroy this whole sector." Mason lifted Whisker in his arms. The small creature looked up at him with faint golden eyes. "Then we leave," Mason said. "We take the fight somewhere no one dreams." Vectra blinked. "You mean the void between galaxies," Mason finished. He looked at Whisker. "Can you do it?" The cat purred once. The room filled with light. Reality twisted, bending around them like fabric. And just like that, the human, the commander, and the tiny cat vanished, leaving behind a trembling world that no longer dared to sleep. No one in the galaxy knew where Mason and Whisker went. The Council believed them dead. Entire fleets searched the wreckage of hyperspace fractures, finding nothing but fragments of melted hulls and silence. The dream war slowed, but didn't stop. Nightmares still leaked through technology, through thought. And in quiet corners of alien space, people whispered the same phrase in a dozen languages. The human and his cat walk the void. They were half right. Mason woke to silence so deep it hurt. No air, no stars, just endless black stretching in every direction. He stood on something solid but couldn't see it. Whisker sat nearby, his fur faintly glowing gold, tail curling around his paws. "Where are we?" Mason asked. His voice didn't echo. "Nowhere," the voice answered inside his mind. "Between thought and matter, the place where forgotten dreams go to die." He swallowed hard. "So, you brought me into your world." Whisker's eyes shimmered like twin suns. "Not my world. The oldest battlefield." Around them, the darkness shifted. Mason saw shapes, mountains rising and collapsing, rivers of light pulsing through the void, and distant shadows that twitched like living storms. Each shape carried whispers, cries, laughter, fragments of dreams from a billion minds. Mason shivered. "All this comes from people's heads." "From their hearts," Whisker corrected softly. "Fear feeds them. Hope weakens them. They were contained for millennia until someone started mocking what humans loved." Mason frowned. "You mean me bringing you to the academy?" Whisker blinked. "They mocked love, loyalty, the small things worth fighting for. That arrogance cracked the barrier. You didn't start the war, Mason. You just showed them what was left of the light." He stood in stunned silence. Somewhere behind them, a massive sound rolled, like the growl of 1,000 creatures breathing as one. "What is that?" "The sleeper," Whisker said quietly. "The one who creates the monsters in all nightmares. It has been feeding off fear for eons. It wants me back or dead." Mason glanced down. "So we stop it." The cat tilted his head. "You say that as if courage alone works in dreams." Mason managed a grin. "It works for humans." The darkness split open. Out of the black rose a form so large it made the void tremble, a colossal creature with shifting faces, each made of someone's terror. Its eyes were galaxies and its voice was thunder. "You cannot protect them," it said. "Dreams belong to me." Whisker stepped forward, his fur igniting into radiant flame. The gold light illuminated Mason's face. "You're not alone," Mason whispered. The sleeper lunged. What followed wasn't a fight of bodies. It was a war of minds. The void became a storm of memory. Mason saw flashes. His childhood cat chasing dust in the sunlight, his mother's voice calling him brave, every small moment he'd ever loved. The sleeper tried to twist them, turning each memory into something cruel, but Whisker's glow cut through. The cat leapt higher than physics should allow, becoming light and sound and fire. Every strike of his claws shredded illusions. Every purr sent ripples of gold through the black. Still, the sleeper was endless. It formed claws of despair, wings made from dead stars. Mason could feel it pressing on his thoughts, whispering, "You are small." "You are nothing!" He clenched his fists. "Then I'm small enough to fit where your fear can't reach." He ran forward, into the storm. The sleeper's shadows surrounded him, but he didn't stop. He grabbed Whisker mid-leap, holding him close. "We finish this together." Whisker's eyes widened. "You'll burn if I unleash it all." Then we burn bright. The cat's fur erupted into pure energy. A wave of white light tore through the void, cutting the sleeper in half. The scream that followed shattered every false star. The darkness peeled away, revealing a horizon of dawn, light spilling into every direction. Mason fell to his knees, exhausted. Whisker landed beside him, smaller now, his glow dim but warm. "Is it over?" Mason asked. "Not yet," Whisker said softly. "But it's sleeping again. This time in my cage." The void began to dissolve. Mason felt gravity return, stars reforming, the hum of a ship reappearing around them. They were back, aboard what was left of the Academy station, now drifting silently near a blue nebula. Vectra's voice came over the comms, stunned. "Mason, is that you?" He coughed. "Yeah, me and the little guy. The dream war stopped. The nightmares. They're fading. You did it." He looked down at Whisker. "We did." The cat purred faintly, curling into Mason's lap. Outside, the nebula glowed brighter, like the universe itself was breathing again. But deep in the silence between the stars, something else stirred. A faint echo, a whisper that said, "Dreams never end." "They only wait." Mason didn't hear it. He was already asleep, Whisker guarding his dreams once more. The war ended, but peace felt fragile, like glass repaired after a shatter. The nightmares were gone, the skies calm again, yet the galaxy slept uneasily. Every mind still carried faint echoes of that storm, faint tremors from the dreams that had nearly devoured reality. Across thousands of worlds, people spoke of a story they swore couldn't be true. A human cadet and his tiny cat, creatures from a small blue planet, had faced something vast, something that lived beyond life itself. No one saw it happen, but every telepath, every scion, and every dream-sensitive being across the stars had felt it. And then, one night, all the stars flared at once. Just for a heartbeat. The old beings of the deep cosmos called it the purr heard across eternity. On the rebuilt Xerex Academy, the survivors gathered for the first memorial since the end of the Dream War. The air was filled with drifting lights, holographic memories of the fallen. Commander Vectra stood at the front platform, her uniform worn, her voice soft. "We honor the ones who fought with courage," she said, her gaze lifting toward the window, "and the ones who showed us that even the smallest life can hold back the dark." The crowd stayed silent. Everyone knew who she meant. Mason Blake, the human cadet who vanished into the void, and his pet Whisker, the creature that defied gods. But Mason wasn't dead. Light years away on a quiet planet orbiting a dim orange star, he lived in peace. A small cottage rested on a hill overlooking silver fields. Birds sang strange melodies and the wind smelled like ozone and starlight. Mason had built the house himself, using what scraps were left from a crashed escape pod. He sat on the porch most days, a mug of synth coffee in his hand, watching the twin moons rise. Whisker lay curled beside him, older now, larger perhaps, but still calm and unbothered. They didn't talk about the war. They didn't need to. Sometimes Mason would dream, never nightmares anymore. In his dreams, he'd walk through endless grasslands under a sky full of constellations that looked like sleeping cats. Whisker would walk beside him, silent, proud, eyes glowing faint gold. One night, while Mason slept, Whisker opened his eyes. The stars reflected in them again, brighter this time. He stood, stretched, and padded toward the edge of the hill. The air shimmered softly, and for a moment reality bent around him. Shapes formed in the darkness, familiar faces, soft purring, shadows that bowed their heads in reverence. They were other dream guardians, beings that had once been trapped or lost. They had followed his light back from the void. Whisker looked up at the sky. His voice, silent, eternal, spread through the dream space of 1,000 species. "Sleep now. You are safe." And for the first time since the galaxy's beginning, every sentient creature dreamed the same dream. A small orange cat sleeping beside a human under a star-filled sky. The nightmares couldn't touch it. The darkness couldn't reach it. Back on Xerex Academy, Commander Vectra woke suddenly at her desk. The stars outside her window glowed brighter than usual. She smiled faintly and whispered, "He's still out there." Word spread slowly across the systems. Pilots painted cats on their ships. Soldiers carved tiny paw symbols into their armor for luck. Children wore pendants shaped like a curled feline tail. To dream of the cat was said to bring protection, and to dream of the human was to remember courage. On Earth, the story returned home. Humans listened, amazed and proud, to the tales carried across star waves. A cat that guarded dreams, they said. A man who walked the void. Years passed. Mason aged. Whisker didn't. One evening, Mason sat watching the sun set. His voice was quiet but steady. "You ever think they'll forget, Whisk?" The cat blinked, tail curling around his hand. "Didn't think so." Mason smiled, leaned back in his chair, and drifted off to sleep one last time. The next morning, the chair was empty. Only a small orange cat sat beside it, staring toward the rising light. His fur glowed faintly gold, then faded as he vanished into the breeze. Far above, stars flickered one after another like they were purring, and somewhere beyond the edge of the universe, A soft voice whispered through every dream. Never mock the small, never doubt the kind, for even in sleep, they guard the stars. The galaxy slept peacefully after that. No nightmares, no fear. Only the quiet rhythm of dreams watched over by a tiny, fearless cat, and the legend of the human who believed in him.